do roll call to confirm. This is the meeting of the Carson City Library Board of Trustees. We have been, we canceled January, rescheduled February. Thank you for your flexibility. And I will kick off our agenda with our roll call.
Chairperson Knight,
Present.
Vice Chair Olivas,
Present.
Trustee Lucas,
Present.
Trustee Markle,
Present.
Trustee Nichols.
Present.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is public comment. Any member of the public who would like to address the Library Board of Trustees may come forward and speak on any topic that's relevant or within the board's purview. There will be another public comment period at the end of the meeting as well. But if you're so inclined, come on up for public comment. Mr. Singer's back. Come on down. Oh.
Sit down.
I want to sit on your lap.
Okay, sit on my lap. Introduce yourself. What is your name? What is your name? Okay, so no Papa Tom. Okay, so come.
I'm Gabriel, and I'm 3 years old boy, and I like Paw Patrol.
Wait, where do you live? Where do you live?
In Carson City.
And what do you like about Carson City?
Oh no.
The library?
The library.
Okay. And what do you like in the library?
Oh no.
Okay, so let me take over. We practice, but
Gabriel. And now.
okay. Leo Singer. I live in Carson City as well, together with Gabriel. And I made a short list, and 3 minutes, it's not enough to cover everything, so I'll do my best. So first of all, I want to thank for the wonderful employees of the library. They absolutely do magics with the resource that they have in their hand, and I'm very, very thankful for them, and they're doing amazing work. And please make sure it's on the record. And second thing, I want to thank for the improvement at the restroom, the child-friendly tap that you put, and the little stool. It is great steps. Shh. Those are great steps moving forward to make the place more children-friendly, and we're appreciating it. The next things that we do want to see, additional ventilation at the restroom. Okay, the restroom does not smell good at all. Okay, additional ventilations is needed there, either to use the existing infrastructure just to put something stronger, or to even drill new holes in the ceiling and put stronger vents there. I don't know when was the last time that you visit there, but it's not. Okay, well, don't do it, please. The next item that I would like to talk about is about the parking lot. To have to make the parking lot safer. And yes, I have a big plan, but from now, small steps that can be done with a can of paint, just to make lines for a safe path for families and kids to go. The existing lights that are there to improve those lights to be wide and not narrow. Now you have spotlights in some places, and it's in the good places, in the places that the unfriendly population does illegal stuff. So it's definitely good to have lights there, but to have that more wide, and those are engineering solutions. The last item I do want to bring, Gabriel, do you want to say anything? Okay, is to have the sheriff more involved in the library. I did look into starting I don't have time to get deep into that, but I did talk with more families that used to use the library and stopped using the library. And we talked about the pros and cons about having the sheriff involvement in the library. and that will be included. They're already doing a terrific job coming for every time when there is a call, but adding some small stuff is having them driving through the parking lot on the way back to the station, just to do a tour in the parking lot, and hopefully like that to keep some of the illegal activity away from the library area. Yes, yes. Thank you, Gabriel. In a moment. Okay. Two other items for the sheriff that came up. One was a sheriff story time, so that the sheriff will come and tell stories. So it's kind of like having the sticks and the carrot. So instead of only using the sheriff or the carrot, involving him as part of the community, as coming and reading a book. We have a terrific sheriff in town, and absolutely wonderful person, a real gentleman, and I'm sure him or his team, someone could come and join that. And same thing with the canine dog. I already know there is one dog, I forgot his name, but that comes to the library and the kids reading book and do activities like that. So do the same with the sheriff dog. And again, having the good impact of the sheriff and also the population that doing prohibit stuff in the library, hopefully seeing the sheriff more there will slow down some of the stuff that neither of us enjoying seeing in the library. I would like to hear the updates that you have. I know you did a lot of work, and thank you for that. So I hoping to hear it all here, and if not, I will follow the minutes. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. And Gabriel. Do we have any other members of the public who wish to speak at this time? All right, just a reminder, we will have another public comment period at the end of the meeting. And let's move on down the agenda to item 3, which is approval of minutes from our previous meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the December 14th meeting minutes? Do we have any corrections or changes you'd like to offer? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
This is Trustee Markle. I move that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting dated December 14th, 2023.
Thank you, Trustee Markle.
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Nichols. Second from Trustee Nichols. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the meeting minutes are approved. Let's move on down the agenda. Item 4A, the Board of Trustee business. This is discussion, possible action regarding planning for the Nevada 83rd legislative session and the state's biennial budget build. This was something, if you remember, back in December, when I had asked for agenda items for for next meeting, which is now this meeting. We had talked about a couple things previous legislative session related to budget. And ultimately what that kind of morphed into was this board signing a letter to the state librarian, just supporting, encouraging, asking for municipal libraries to be completely funded the way they had been before budget cuts happened. And then we got in that terrible cycle of base budget reflecting a cut budget having not been restored. And so what I wanted to get out for this time, and that's just, biennial budget build, there's also the other part, the more popular part of legislative session, which has to do with changes to NRS, if anybody's interested in going down library law path. I just want to get this out there. If we want to do a similar letter like we had last biennium, or if there's any other issue that we kind of want to be thinking about or drawing attention to, that's why I wanted this on the agenda. So, anybody have thoughts?
Could anyone refresh our memories about, I feel like we did see, last time we did see some, like a slight increase in funding, was that the case, but not necessarily the full restoration, but I could be wrong. I would like if anybody remembers, a refresher.
You might be talking about the Christmas tree bill at the end, right? We did see a little funding boost right at the end, which was
That could
kind of
be
a
it.
one-shot.
That could
So,
be it.
yeah, you are correct. You are remembering an increase in funding.
A small one-time,
A one-time
unrelated.
deal, but yes.
Okay.
But that's still something. I mean, we're not going to look a gift horse in the mouth.
Trustee Nichols, yes, I would like to have us sign that letter.
Same letter,
Same
idea.
letter again, and just keep pushing for the fact that it's in statute, right? Isn't that the one where it says,
It says
yeah.
in statute you get X dollars and
Yeah.
it's not actually ever in the budget.
right? Because I think that would solve, if they got more money, I think that would solve some more problems. So we wouldn't have to be asking for changes maybe, or, I don't know, but I would like to see us push and have that letter drawn up.
Yeah. All right. And are we thinking just kind of similar? I feel like the letter last session applies this session too, but we can.
Joy Holt, Library Director for the record. I have it. I actually found it and was, ready to launch ish. And I just wanted to state and remind everyone that what we're talking about in terms of as it relates to the statute is the collection development funding that's provided by the state. So that's what we're talking about is the state abiding by the statute or giving out. They have a window of or a span of funds that they can provide as part of the state's contribution and match for the federal money that's received. And they haven't, we're not, for our population size, we just haven't seen that. And so that's what this is about specifically, right? But the letter is pretty clear about that.
And we are seeing, a shift in how collection dollars are spent with the advent of our electronic materials becoming increasingly popular.
Mm-hmm.
And those aren't, it's my understanding, those aren't necessarily purchases, but more like leases,
It depends.
depending on
Mhm.
what you're
Yeah.
looking at. And the cost does not appear to be in parallel with print materials. So,
Oh, no, they're exceptionally more expensive. Yeah.
um,
Exponentially is what I meant to say. Yeah. Yeah,
both words
yeah,
work.
an audiobook is about $100, and an electronic book is half of that, maybe. So they're good. The print version versus electronic book version, not the audiobook, is a good triple the cost. And they're purchased unmetered, and there's a variety of different ways that the publishers will charge for them. Also, what we're starting to see is an uptick in books simply not being available on audiobook or electronic book unless you're a Kindle user, for example. We just ran into that because I suggested a purchase to our collection developer, and it's a third book in a series, and the publisher is not making that audiobook version available to libraries.
Whereas that would be illegal if it were print.
Hmm?
Would that be legal if it were print?
I'm not sure about the legalities, but I doubt they would do that because they would still be getting some
Getting
sort of,
sale.
yeah.
Mm.
And a lot of it, my suspicion and sort of what the field is saying out there is that it's sort of a cornering the market because of Audible. So now you can only get it, if it's an audiobook, you can only listen to it through Audible. If it's an ebook, you can only purchase it through Kindle. So that's happening.
And what's the implication for libraries? I mean, are libraries going to end up with some kind of library version of paying for a subscription to Audible at some point?
I don't know, probably.
I'd
I
be
mean,
curious to know.
something's got to give. The American Library Association, they took a run at this a couple of years ago, and actually, in two cases, one in Maryland, they made it to appeal. So they won against the publishers for the incredible amount of money that they're charging for electronic materials on behalf of libraries and the metered access and things like that. And it didn't, lost on the appeal. And then New York State got it to the Supreme Court, and if I'm remembering this correctly, and it got past the Supreme Court and got vetoed.
Okay, so state Supreme Court, and then when,
Yeah, then it was ready to be turned into, it got past this. So let me back up. No, I'm misspeaking. So they had a ballot measure. It made it on the ballot. It made it through the whole process, and then it got challenged and went all the way to the Supreme. It got vetoed, was New York. And then Maryland it got to the Supreme Court, and it got appealed. They lost the appeal, the publishers, and then they went, sorry, I'm like rambling, but it's all coming back to me now. And then it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court overturned.
oh, interesting.
So long story short, if I'm remembering all this correctly, which has been a couple of years, the publishers won, essentially.
So
at the
it
end
comes
of the
down to
day.
the copyright
Yeah.
argument,
Yes.
right? Yeah, okay.
And so now ALA is they're going to take another run at it from a different perspective to try and talk about, because this was based on trade, like fair trade. And so now they're going to try and take another run at it based on barriers to access, et cetera. They haven't really figured it out entirely yet. But everyone recognizes the field, and I just think the states recognize that it's going to be an issue going forward.
Well, also, books can be withdrawn after they're metered after they've been read a certain number of times that you've paid for. You know, you may have paid
Yep.
for so many times or
Yeah.
so much time.
26
Yeah.
months or something. Yeah.
Right, and then they can be withdrawn, and so the library if they want to continue access to that book, they have to buy it again. Whereas, a physical book, when you buy it, maybe it'll
Unless
get lost, but
yeah.
it can stay on your shelf for a long time, which, doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue that's going to have to get addressed nationally. So we'll see.
I'd be curious to know if we've got any interest at a state legislative level to address, or are we going to wait and see what other states do, or hang out and watch what happens at a national level with ALA? I guess that's a question to anybody. If you feel that there's an angle to be pursued, looking at legislative remedy for next biennium.
I personally think waiting to see what ALA does, because we know that the other route failed. And so if my concern is that Nevada will say, well, it failed in Maryland and it failed in New York, and so why should we get on board? And there is a handful of other states that have tried it as well and immediately backed off after it got vetoed.
Oh, based on the fair trade thing going after publishers.
Yeah,
Was that what
they just said, we're not gonna, this is a waste of money. The AGs decided, it's just not gonna, get it doesn't have any legs. So we'll see. But I feel like either or. But I feel like ALA's going to be gathering some steam over it because it really, and probably PLA, which is the Public Library Association, will be making some inroads on it because it is going to become such a huge issue. And it's going to essentially, at some point, be cost prohibitive. They're expensive, but if they continue to, because 8 years ago when I came into libraries, the metered thing didn't exist. It started up while I was in my first year in libraries. And it was like, what is this? And now it's just gotten more, there's more and more details and more restrictions. And so it's sort of unregulated in a way, in terms of fair dealing.
So I could see an argument that says an electronic material is significantly more durable than a print material.
Mm-hmm.
So where in your collection example, if you've got a print material that eventually does wear out, you do have to buy another copy if you want to keep it in your collection. Whereas that one-time purchase with an electronic material, maybe not. So you could imagine an example where publishers could be concerned about losses. Although I'm not sure that that's what we're seeing. I could see where that thread can then be pulled, and then
Yeah.
we're in a situation now where we just keep layering on additional restrictions.
Yeah, I think
before-
eventually
yeah.
they're going to have to reach a compromise where it's not going to be so, there won't be so many restrictions or rules or things that are tying it up. But I don't see them going back to the way that it was 8 years ago, where it was like you bought an audiobook and you had it in your platform.
Yeah.
Well, I think also we have to remember the writers and the authors of these materials. I mean, look at what happened with the the television writers, because it's not just the publishers that are out there, just itching for more money. They're out there for their authors and for their the people in their stable of writers that need to be taken care of. I mean, if the book is really, really popular, the writers need to have some kind of reward from that. So I think that we can't forget that that's part of it also.
Quite a balancing act.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that, and I'm just sort of hypothesizing here, I think what probably will need to happen is more time will need to go by, so there will be more data to gather, so that the AG's office in different states or whomever wants to, the plaintiff's attorney wants to take this on, that they will have enough data to say, okay, authors, here's the ROI to you when libraries have your material. Here's how James Patterson, for example, not that he needs more money, but bless him. Here, James Patterson, because there were affordable electronic resources available in libraries to your materials, we can tie your sales to that. Like here's the estimated sales cost or say expense for income from sales that we can identify was because of library use. I don't know how that would be done. I don't know what the metrics on that would be, but I think there's going to have to be data like that
Yeah.
to show.
I think it has to be, well, my opinion would be it has to be a power state. I mean, Nevada doesn't have that kind of power, but California might.
Like purchasing power, you mean, yeah.
Well, not
To
just
actually
purchasing
negotiate
power,
and
but
look at-
People power.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
power in,
Yeah.
all the entities that are involved. And but a state like California or Washington.
I could see
State.
Washington leading the charge on
Yeah,
that.
Washington.
Yeah.
So as far as legislative initiative in that arena, that might be a back burner holding pattern on that. It does sound like the board wants to go ahead and draft again. We're making a tradition.
You could change some
December.
words.
What?
You could change some words.
Right.
So
We'll
it's
change a
not
couple
the
words, yeah.
Exact.
We'll
same
make sure,
pattern.
make sure it's on the current letterhead, yeah.
20th time, this is what we
Yes.
Yeah, well, it'll be instead of to whom it may concern, it'll be dear sir, madam. That's the thing we'll change.
Right. And that'll be for the biennial budget bill for the State Library and Archives, funding their budget specifically for the Collection Development Fund that comes to public libraries. Is that
Yeah.
about the sum of it?
I'm
Okay.
not sure on the time frame though. When
Yeah,
it can be up till the. Yeah,
well, typically what happens is right now you're in the season of agencies
Yeah.
building their budgets. And depending on the size of the agency, your timelines might be different. If you're a little agency, but you're within a larger department, you might have it broken down. And
Right.
so your departmental review is due well before it ever goes to the governor's office for their review. But you don't actually see the governor's recommended budget until the month before
Right.
legislative session starts, when he
I
does the
feel
state of
like the
state.
cutoff for it was like November, right? Or maybe it was September.
Yeah,
That was the last.
for staff to
Yeah,
get new
yeah.
ideas in.
Yeah.
So it's not so much about, well, let me back up. The timing influences the target audience more than it does the action, right? So you write a letter regardless. Who you send it to, that's where the timeline is involved, right? So if we're sending it to our state librarian because it's the budget is still being built there, versus if it's going to, is it Jack Rapp? No, who is it now in charge of Department of Admin?
Jack somebody. He used to be
Is
with
it Jack
Endow.
Robb?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was
So then
former
maybe instead of
Endow.
addressing it to the state librarian, it goes to the administrator of the Department of Administration. If we miss a deadline there, then it goes straight to the governor and says, hey, I see that you're developing your governor's recommended budget, because that's where we are in the timeline. So I think we still write the letter. It's just a matter of who you address it to is going to be determined by how soon we can get that signed and
Right.
out. But
Okay.
I think it's yeah.
Okay.
Kickoff for agencies, right? So, yeah. Governor's recommended isn't going to be for another year. So we have that squishy room where it's there in the middle of the build, and the kickoff is more to do with when they can get things entered in the system. So things are still kind of conceptual. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do a draft and present it in a few months, or what are
Can
your
we look at-
thoughts?
What do you guys want to do? Do you want to look at last year's next meeting and edit that way?
When did we send last year's?
It wasn't last year. It was the year before.
Yeah, but what time
Yeah.
of year did we send out?
I don't remember. I'd have to look at the letter. But I feel like it was spring.
Springish, yeah.
Yeah. I'd have to look though.
Okay. So if that's what we want to do, I don't know if we need an action for that or not, other than for you to come back with a draft for us to approve at the next meeting.
I'm not sure. Do we need an action? This was for discussion only,
Yeah.
or no possible action.
Yeah,
Right.
possible action if we have. I feel like if you can just bring us a draft next
Yeah, sure.
meeting, the action would be us approving it.
Got you. Do you want me to do that, or do you want to just cut to the chase and have me draft it and bring a draft, or do you want to look at the one from before first?
You could do both. You could bring, because
Okay.
that's public record anyway, that we
Yeah.
can go dig that out of minutes from
Sure.
last time we had it.
Okay.
And then if you want to bring a
Well,
draft,
now I really
we'll do
can't
that.
riff the whole thing. I've got to do some creative writing.
Yes.
Make a motion to direct the library director to come back with a plan as discussed on the record.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion to direct our library director to come back to us next meeting with a plan? And a letter, draft letter?
Trustee Nichols, I make a motion that we have the library director come back at the next meeting with a plan and a letter.
I'll second the motion. Trustee Lucas.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none? Okay, well, you have your assignment.
All right.
Let's move on to agenda item 5 for information only. This is our library director's administrative reports. And I'll turn the floor over to you, Director Holt.
Okay. So I've put the safety outline per the request that, or directive I was given in December to talk about what our internal processes and protocols are for safety, to ensure safety. So does anyone have any questions about this? Is there anything I need to clarify?
Okay, so is this an internal document that is currently in place within the library? Is this a draft of something we're trying
No,
to
this
put in?
is
What
our,
the
this is
exact
an outline or a explanation of what our internal protocols are, that what we do.
Okay, and have
Um,
the other staff members seen this? Is this something that like is in
They've,
use?
they have, it's not been in writing up until now. Well, let me rephrase. Pieces of it are in writing. Pieces of it are simply just deployed in practice. So I was asked to just provide an explanation of what we do.
Okay,
But now that we have this, we are actively working on a desk manual for our information desks. So we will more than likely incorporate a lot of this and put it in writing as internal protocol.
thank you.
So, yeah. But this is really just giving giving an explanation of here's what we do, here's how we do it, here's why we do it. So
Has there been a lighting evaluation done yet?
there has. So it's underway. They have made some adjustments. Part of the problem was that our light that faces east, well, trying to think, sort of northeast. It faces the parking lot this way, so east. And they're lights that have, they're two-pronged, and they're pretty big, but it had been turned around from wind, so it was lighting Smith's parking lot.
Oh,
So
okay.
they have adjusted that, and they're evaluating it right now, facilities is, to see how they can adjust it to cast the most light, but also if they need to add extra light, or if we need to just put in a whole new light pole, or additional light pole. And so they're trying this first because it's the least expensive. And they also need to make sure whilst they're doing it, it has to be finessed to a certain extent, because depending on how they move it, it can shine a spotlight into the apartment complex across the street. And they've experienced that and had to deal with that issue with the residents there. So they are actively working on it. We did have a safety inspection today. Now, that's a routine inspection that they do every year, but it really shakes out to about every other year because there's 96 buildings to be covered. And that's inside only. And that's a matter of course with the risk management department of the city. And so we just go through and we look and make sure that all of our fire extinguishers are up to date, that we don't have 15 different cords plugged into one power cord, that we don't have space heaters, electric blankets, that we're just basically doing all of the safety protocol that we have to. So we had a few things, and they'll come back in 2 weeks to make sure that we've addressed the issues. So we had some, I will say this, because I asked for clarification. I said, are these things that we've done wrong here internally as employees? And it was just building stuff. Like, we don't have, because last time they were there, we did have some power cords where we had a bunch of stuff. They were like, oh no. So now I go around, I'm like the power cord regulator. So we had some of ceiling tiles like the ones in here that are damaged, that need to be replaced. And the facilities will do that for us immediately. We also had 2 fire extinguishers. The city switched carriers or providers a year ago. And when the new provider came to do their yearly evaluation in November, they missed 2 of our extinguishers. So we'll have facilities will either reach out to them or we will to have them come and do an assessment and just update them, switch them out if they need to be. And I think those were the only things that we really needed to, that they gave us a strike on, a ding. So we were, and then we had a couple of different exit signs that don't light up as they're meant to. So, when you have exit signs, they are meant to light up when you open the door. So they have the exit word itself that lights up, and then there's 2 lights on either side that are supposed to light up. And we have this little hole that you can push into a certain spot on the exit sign, and it shows you if the lights work. And we have 2 of them that are they don't stay on, they flash. So that's another thing facilities will have to come and take a look at. and they're repeat offenders. Like they're the bane of our existence. Those two, I think they've been a problem on every safety inspection. So we just switch, the facilities comes and takes care of it. I don't know I don't know if they burn out or what the story is. It's in the digitorium. So those are all things that facilities will help us with.
Sorry, Trustee Nichols, I may need a history lesson.
Okay.
Because I maybe, sorry, I don't need to yell on this thing. I wasn't here when this happened. So I'm reading the very first thing, the NRS. And it says the library and reading room, yada, 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 must forever be and remain free and accessible to the public, subject to such reasonable regulations as the trustees of the library may adopt.
Right.
Then it looks like in 2021, the trustees adopted the Carson City Library Policies and Procedures. During that time, is that when, did they come up with a code of conduct for enforcement?
I think the code of conduct for enforcement has been in place. Well, I can say that the current code of conduct that's displayed on signage in the library has been there since 2017.
Okay, so I guess, and I'm not trying to be a cop here, but
Okay.
I'm trying to understand this. So the code of conduct enforcement, there's a, first warning. At the first warning, the person is asked to leave for the day. Second warning, the person is, second warning is asked to leave for the day.
No, so the first warning is that they'll be told that if we have to speak
Okay,
to them
the
about it
second one,
again,
okay,
that they'll be asked to leave for the day. Yeah.
And then there's a temporary trespass from the library, and then the permanent trespass from the library. And obviously, if somebody makes a threat, physical harm to another patron or staff, or even makes a movement of physical threat or makes physical contact with another patron or staff member, they will be legally trespassed by law enforcement for a period of no less than a year. So that's not permanent.
Right.
Okay. And also, I guess maybe I have a question for all of us. So let's say you have somebody who's got 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 violations. I mean, at what point do we go, nah, you clearly can't conduct yourself in the library?
You mean lifetime, or you mean like within a
Well,
year?
it says permanent trespass to the library.
So maybe I
you
should
said
change
a
that.
year.
But
I'm just asking if that is something that we would consider. I'm just curious. What would happen again if somebody over and over again violates? We don't seem to have.
Well, has that happened?
No, not that someone's come. Usually, in my experience, when someone is, so I can rephrase, because the permanent trespass it's permanent for the duration of the time. It's not a temporary trespass as in a week or a month. It's going to be for at least a year. And I use the term legal because that means that we've filed paperwork with the law enforcement, and that person will, their consequence for continuing to come to the library will ramp up. So they might get told, depends on the law enforcement officer as well, because I've had several conversations with them about this. We haven't had to deal with like a trespass where they're just a lifetime banishment.
Oh, that's good.
And frankly, most libraries that I have worked at, who I know of, colleagues, are strongly opposed to lifetime banishments.
Thank you
So
for the
it almost
clarification.
doesn't happen. We've luckily not had to face it. Most of the time when they get trespassed for a long period of time, they don't return. So.
This does say any further additional actions are determined by law enforcement. So, if during that 1 year permanent trespass, if there's more violations, then, it's up the ladder.
Right, it's up to law enforcement if they're going to. So, for example, we had a situation in which the person was facing this situation. Law enforcement came and they chose to the person was just walked to the end of the parking lot, and they weren't ticketed, even though I had said to them, I would like him to be trespassed for a month, and he wasn't ticketed. He was just walked to the parking lot. That's no judgment on law enforcement. They have to make their own decisions too, as to what they're capable and what their resources are. And then, recently there was a gentleman who was very intoxicated, and law enforcement came to help us because we couldn't revive him. Well, we couldn't roust him. And he asked them to take him to jail, and they said no. So they walked him to the end of the parking lot.
Well,
So, and I did have a conversation with law enforcement about, we did have an incident where a gentleman was also very intoxicated and in very, very bad shape. And when they arrived, they talked to me about what we can do if we want to say we want them trespassed for a year. We would have to do the equivalent of what's called a citizen's arrest and fill out paperwork, and they will then respond. But I did ask the question of the law enforcement officer. I said, so how is that different than what we do now? And he was a little bit off by it. I said, I'm not trying to be unreasonable. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to figure out what we should do and how I should mention this to my board. And he said, it really is no different. He said, we're dealing with the same thing that y'all are dealing with. And that is that this is just how it happens. I mean, and so the gentleman that was in really bad shape, he was trespassed because it was ramping up. And so he was trespassed for 6 months, and he came for the next 3 days, came back to the library. And law enforcement had to come and walk him to we try to take care of that so that law enforcement isn't so taxed with having to keep coming. But if they had come, there's not a whole lot that's going to happen from that. He'll get taken out of the library and walked maybe to the parking lot, maybe get ticketed, maybe go to jail. But I've yet to see anyone actually for, those sorts of code of conduct violations in the library be taken to jail unless they've drawn blood. We did have that fight where the gentleman threw the big dictionary at the other gentleman and drew blood, and he did get arrested. But as far as, public intoxication, that kind of thing, I've not ever seen anyone be, handcuffed and anything like that. So it's very complicated.
I think I'm trying to remember now, June 22nd, 2021, our policies and procedures that the board was adopting then, I think, was more of a cleanup of collection development policy than it was actual code of conduct.
And we do need to do some other work on that. That's one of my first orders of business here in the new fiscal is to, not that it really matters that it's fiscal, but it's a nice starting point.
Yes.
So yes, our
So it was less
policies.
to do with
Yeah, but it was definitely more about collection development.
Yeah.
And there's some other things too. But we do work really hard to enforce the code of conduct. We are, and our staff has gotten ramped up even more. We have responded to concerns about, the bathroom safety and provided stools and got extenders for the faucets. We have ramped up increased the number of times that we check in the bathroom during the course of the day. There are some times we took a bloodborne pathogen safety course, and in that course it recommended that we purchase some specific PPE, like disposable aprons and things like that. So we did. However, it's a public restroom, so it's hard to know when exactly who exactly is doing what. So, for example, we've had, not recently, I would have said recently at our last meeting, some blood in one of our urinals in the men's room, and it was consistently every day. And we all sort of drew the conclusion that this was someone who has some sort of health issue. We don't know who that is. All we can do is clean it. Or our janitors. A few nights we found it at night, and so we left it for the janitors to clean up. But if it's the middle of the day, so we can't know who's doing what. We just try to be on top of it and make sure that people aren't passed out inside, or people aren't doing drugs, people aren't rolling cigarettes, vaping, et cetera. So we have increased our amount of time that we spend making sure that that's not happening. And I also did contact because I was asked by risk management, who was asked by Supervisor Curtis Horton, and we touched on it a little bit here as well, to look into what do other libraries do. So a quick answer to your question, Trustee Markle, Washoe County does not have a security guard. They do not lock their bathrooms, because it was specifically Supervisor Horton wanted to know if we'd ever knew any information or considered locking the bathrooms. Washoe County also does not lock their bathrooms per their director. The reason they don't is because at previous libraries, and I don't know if it was actually a choice by the current director, but he did say to me, at other libraries I've been at where they've locked the bathrooms, it created more problems or a whole new set of problems. So I did reach out on a public forum of library colleagues across the nation of all sizes if they lock their bathrooms. And I canvassed 35 libraries. I received responses from 35 libraries, and 25 of them answered no, they do not lock their bathrooms. 10 answered yes. And the majority reason for them answering no was that the locking didn't prevent any incidences, or it was locking the bathrooms was not actually helping folks who were trying to get in, like say with a child. Because you've got, let's think, for example, there was the gentleman that came and his child was having, he was potty training and he was having some issues, and he was trying to get him into the bathroom. When someone's trying to wrangle a child and a baby carriage or a stroller or a car seat, and they have to and there's a variety of different ways that these libraries who do, of the 10 that said they've done it, some of them knows had done it and stopped doing it. Of those, there was a variety of ways. Like some of them had a buzzer that could be buzzed. The doors could be opened by a kind of a buzzer system from the front desk. And then others where you have to come get a big key, like when you go to the gas station, they give you a giant hanger connected to one. The reason I say that is I just went to a gas station that did that. So there's this variety of ways. And mostly what it did, a big complaint was that it put a lot of strain on the staff to have to make sure that people were coming out. And that it just wasn't addressing the problem. It wasn't stopping filth and drug use and all of those things that are associated with the bathrooms. So, and there were some libraries that responded also that have family restrooms or like a restroom that you would see at Starbucks. And the ones that had those successfully had them had specific separate children's areas that had their own separate bathrooms. So they were they were successful with those. But the others said that when they had those bathrooms and tried to do something like that, people were just locking themselves in the bathroom all day. So that was just what I observed and the information I received. Now, the people that did say yes said that they were able to successfully do it, and what it did do for them is it prevented the bathing in the bathrooms. And I was surprised to hear that most of the people who said we've done this and we stuck with it is because of teens causing a ruckus and getting up to shenanigans in the bathrooms. So, and we don't have that thankfully. Hope I didn't just invoke it.
I don't, well, we'll see. Okay. I think that's the end of your safety presentation.
Yeah.
And then you need it to-
Oh, and one last thing I did want to say that I have been in contact with the Public Works Department regarding some capital improvement funding that we received, we talked about last time. Because I did meet with facilities to talk about the possibilities in the bathrooms and things that can be done. And long story short, Public Works is going to, I'm going to get with some more information to them about the funding. And then they will reach out to the different architects that they've worked with to have someone come and do an analysis and talk with us about what our options are. The facilities did let me know that they expect that, first of all, we put in the request in 2019 and it finally got over the finish line, but also, so things are a lot more expensive now, but also they said that what they anticipated, what they've seen in other buildings is when you make a structural change, you have to bring everything else up to code, modern code or current code. And they said that can be a big expense. But they weren't able to give me, I was like, can you give me a ballpark? And no. So those are things that I knew they were going to say that, but you have to do the entire, you can't just like swap out the doors and bring the doors out to code. And they can look at the stalls right now and say, these would have to be totally reconfigured because we're grandfathered in for ADA in those bathrooms. But if we were to bring them up to code, we'd have to change a bunch of stuff. So, I mean, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It's just that that's going to be a part of the cost. And my understanding is, and the understanding of Public Works was, most of the funding that we were seeking out was for cosmetic changes, not structural changes. So, and the number was conjured. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to come up with a quote or anything like that to present for the initial capital improvement request. So TBC on that, but I have reached out to them and trying to get everything. I'm trying to address everything that has been a concern. So that's that. Any other questions about that? Oh, and I'm sorry, one last thing.
No, go ahead.
Cheryl Levis asked me, do the staff feel unsafe? And so I routinely check in with them, but I specifically have checked in with them several times since our last meeting in December, and they've all told me that they don't feel unsafe. They've one staff member said they feel safe. It's a better way of putting it. One staff member, well, actually several said I've never felt unsafe. So, for what it's worth, now are they feeling uncomfortable telling me they feel unsafe? I hope not, because if they're feeling unsafe, then we'll do what we can to help.
You're their boss. I mean.
Right. I mean, there's a power differential for sure.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, there's only so much I can do. I ask, and so hopefully that's true. Yeah. Hopefully we're taking all steps we can to make them feel safe. So, any questions about the money? And finally, the gift fund. I think next time we're going to see the money come through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. One thing I did want to mention, you're not going to see it here, but you're not going to see it for a while, but we did. The Friends actually at one point had a gifting book that has now been basically dismantled. But there has been a community donor who's donated $1,000 every year for the last 3 years for a large computer project. And so the Friends told me about it many months ago. I thought I was supposed to ask for some funding during my yearly ask, but because of the nature of the donation, and it was a specific donation, a restricted donation, that I could have asked for it months ago. But as it is, they brought them, it was $3,300, something, $3,100. Anyways, it allowed us to buy 4, we'll make up the difference, but it allowed us to buy 4 new public computers. So, yeah, so we can swap out some of those really old all-in-ones that are like 15 years old. I mean, they're still going, but, so yeah. So that was cool. And, I attended the Friends annual meeting or volunteer luncheon and just gave them a brief rundown of everything that we've spent the money on. And then that ask will be coming up for the new fiscal in April, is when I typically submit. And we'll probably just keep rocking with and asking for what we've been asking for, because we've been successful. And a big portion of the funding, half the funding they provided, we've asked to spend on electronic resources. So. Oh, and our collection development grant, I might have had this on my report, but the collection development grant from the state has been spent. We got $11,000. So of that $500,000 one-shot money, Trustee Lucas, because of the way that it all gets dispersed out, it gets dispersed out over a 2-year period since we're on a biennium. And of that $500,000 from the Christmas tree fund, we got $3,000 more over the course of 2 years. So we saw an increase of $1,500, and we'll see another, next year we'll see an increase of $1,500. So that's what the 500 got us.
It's 3,000.
But we fought the good fight. We went over to the legislature and took all our fancy equipment and lobbied. Not really, lobbied's the wrong word. We visited with different legislators and things like that. So,
Which,
yeah, I mean,
3,000 is 3,000.
they got us $500 or $500,000. Maybe we'll get
we're happy
another.
for it.
Yeah. We just got to keep on keeping on with that.
Yeah.
So,
All right,
any
that's
other
the money?
any questions? Huh? Any-
That's the money
Yeah.
portion? Okay.
Yeah, unless you guys have any questions about the specifics on there.
From the trustees, or you want to move on to your
Sure.
director's report?
So I haven't changed this, so there's some things that have been updated here recently. So an additional shelfer position has been opened. One of our longtime shelvers left. She's in school, and she said she couldn't keep up with it and her school schedule. So that's been posted, and lots of applications are coming in. We also posted the senior library assistant position. It was pending at this time. It's now been posted. It's about to, that posting is about to expire. So then we'll be doing some interviews. We've sort of put the library clerk position on hold because we've looked at how we can move the schedules that folks work. But we will need to hire an administrative clerk to do the front portion or the onset portion of financials because I hired a deputy.
Yay.
Her name is Sarah Martell, and she started on February 9th. And she's been in libraries or information agencies for a really long time. She's the former records manager. This is her second promotion in less than a year, and she's been great. And she has just a lot of experience. She has a lot of supervisory experience, 20 plus years. So, and the staff was so excited and supportive and happy to have her have that position. So now we are going to have to fill her position as circulation supervisor. So hopefully I'll get that approved next week. And my plan is to internally post it, because I think we have some folks. I've heard rumblings that we have folks who are internally interested. So of course I want to promote from within if we can, because we have an awesome staff. And I would say everyone there right now is promotable. So the opportunity comes, then I just think I feel very lucky that everyone's promotable. And so let's see, some programming and outreach events. So speaking of law enforcement coming with dogs, Teaching Time with Toffee, Toffee is the Juvenile Services, Department of Juvenile Services, like service dog. And Toffee is from Hungary, and she's beautiful brown lab. And what the program is the kids being like, Toffee, here's this is an orange. They have these little cards, and they instead of reading a Toffee, they like teach Toffee what orange color is or what an orange itself looks like. And it's been hugely successful. And Frank Moynihan is the juvenile probation officer that comes with Toffee. And then we had a presentation hiking the Tahoe Rim Trail. Our citizenship classes are starting back up, and they're going to run they're running from the 3rd through the end of March. And that's a partnership with the veterans, Varn?
Varn.
No, I can't remember. Oh, RSVP. Sorry. Oh my gosh. Can tell it's been a long day. And that's something we've done pretty much every year. And so they're back at it. And then to celebrate President's Day, we had a Build a Log Cabin program, and we had a Mount Rushmore cutout made where you can stick your head and your heads on the different presidential figures. And we did sort of a presidential themed story time. And people were really excited and were really expressed lots of gratitude that we were open. So that again has been very successful. So, and we had a Martin Luther King passive program where we had just quotes from Dr. King throughout the library. And then our winter reading challenge, I don't think we had those numbers when we haven't met since December. So we were at 95% of our goal. So we fell just a little short, but still exponentially higher than last year. And like I said, you can read here, the total minutes read for each age group was more than doubled since, Yeah, thank you. I know, I said I should win the prize for the participant that's the most impressed with their own performance, because I'm like, I read 1,000 minutes. Yeah, you're done, madam. And so we did, at the time of this writing, had 2 shattered windows in the library. One was because someone shot a hole through the window with a BB gun on Christmas. And the other, I'm not sure. They were on both sides of the breezeway. Now, the good news is those windows are double paned, but they're double paned in a way that they're fairly far apart, double pane. So it was the exterior windows that got shattered. So they've both been replaced at this point. But it did take a minute. It took about 6 weeks for the glass to come in. So they literally just got replaced last week.
Wow.
Yeah. But we knew one was a BB gun because the telltale hole was right there. We could see the point of impact. As far as the other, I think it looked like somebody hit it with a fist because the impact splatter, but who knows? We tried to see on our video and no dice, nothing. We're going to be staffing the digitorium now because we've just had a bunch of repeated rule violations with some of the teens. And so we're back to staffing that. And so far we've had a lot of success. And we're still working on with our human-centered design consultant to revamp that. And then I also am looking into a more comprehensive tracking of patron incidences. So I think I wanted to point out that this is such an issue in libraries that a company comprised of librarians created a software to keep track of patron incidences in libraries. And so I think it's called PITS, Patron Incidents Tracking System. And I've reached out to them. They haven't responded, but I've reached out to them. And that reminds me I need to follow up for a trial. And it's just it's a very comprehensive way of tracking patron incidences. How we do that now is we have a spreadsheet. I'm not sure if we need something that detailed or that I don't know if we need to get that deep because we're not a very big system. But we'll see. Oh, and also, one last thing. We were in the early stages of working with the de-escalation and mediation professional who spoke at the NLA conference to participate in a sort of a cohort of libraries to better come up with a plan of how to address some of these issues that libraries are dealing with nationwide. So, and how to what is specific to libraries that librarians need to have, what skill set and what tools do they need that are to address these things that we, in conflicts that we are very unique to libraries. So that's in infancy stages though. So I'll have more information about that as we roll on.
Great. And
That's
at
it.
the end of your report. Okay. do
That's
we have,
it.
questions for Director Holt on any of her reports? Anything going on before I move on to the next agenda item? Okay, then let's move on. Thank you. Let's move on to our next agenda item, which is information only, our board members' announcements and requests for information. And I always read requests for information as what do you guys want to see on the next agenda? So any items? from the trustees? Okay, I'll be the only one. It's okay. Quickly, I want to announce I'm looking more seriously for folks who are interested in establishing or revamping our Carson City Library Foundation, because it's currently folded into the Friends right now. And I know there's a lot of history there, but I think we're on such a roll. It's a good time to try bringing that back. So if you are someone who's interested, or you know someone who might be interested, send them my way. That's my announcement on that.
Trustee Lucas, can you remind me the role of the foundation as it existed before separately? Thank you.
Yeah. Usually larger dollar, larger project kind of thing. So Friends are going to run a bookstore, which is very, very, very useful. Foundations are going to look for that great big expenditure, new buildings, opening branches, big splashy things, you know. And then I would like to make a request. Now, I'm looking for a pretty comprehensive presentation, which means you don't have to do it if you know someone else who can do it, okay? But I'm looking for an overview on library procurement procedures, policies, what people do, how all that works when you're buying items for your collections. So specifically procurement around the collection, not where you get tables and chairs, but like where
Specific,
you get
like book materials, like
Yes.
actual materials that are going to go on the shelf or go into the collection
Yes.
for patron use
Yes.
outside of a library.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you have knowledge, or whoever your presenter is has knowledge on what that looks like in a public library compared to maybe what you see in K-12 settings, what specialty library, law libraries, things like that do.
Well, any of us with a master's
Archives,
in library science could speak
universities.
to this because we have to.
Who?
Any of us with a master's in library
Yeah,
science
you
should
have
be
to know
able to
these
speak
things.
to it.
And
Yeah.
I'm specifically, I'm looking for kind of also how this works within Nevada. So is there collective purchasing power being leveraged? Is it impossible to have collective purchasing power because of the unique different areas, categories that are being purchased? I'd be curious to know about things that relate not just to print materials, but even like access to databases, which I think is more in specialty in university, but still, I'd be curious to know how the procurement works. Do you have contracts? Do you just pay with a P card? How negotiations go, how solicitations go, and if collective purchasing power exists or can exist. So that would be the presentation I'm looking for.
When would you like that?
Can we do a next meeting?
Well, next
Or-
meeting's in 2 weeks.
So let's do next meeting.
Okay.
April?
So April?
Yeah.
One thing I did want to say too is it's time for us to think about my evaluation.
Yeah.
So I'll mention that in March.
In March, yeah. I do have
In
it
2
on
weeks.
I do have it in my planner.
'Kay.
My little planner that I'd be lost without. Right at the top of March, Joy's eval. So that might be do you want to put an agenda item for March related to
Sure.
your eval? Who's going to do what?
Okay.
If we're still
Yeah.
going to do the 360 or anything related to that, make an agenda item out of that and put that on for March.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, going once, going twice. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to move on to our last public comment period. Just like before, any member of the public who wants to address the Board of Trustees on any matter related to Carson City Library, please step forward, say your name for the record. And I'm not asking for a time limit on comments. You guys are pretty succinct. So, Mr. Singer, come on down.
Should I introduce myself again? Or?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Leo Singer, living in Carson City. So, yes, I'm one of the people that been approached for the foundation, and I am involved with the WNC Foundation and with our Temple Foundation, so I have some experience with that. For foundation, you need strong community who care enough that a certain percent of them will open the pocket and show how much they care. And for this community, we need to bring them back. And the good news is that this community exists. This community, if you'll go to the Yellow Library in South Reno, you'll see this community. If you'll go to the Inkland Village Library, you'll definitely see this community. If you'll go to Barnes & Noble and any of the small independent bookstores in Reno, the public is there. The public loves books. Everybody blame the digital world, but the public is still there. We need to bring this public back. And thank you so much for the great safety review. I'm sorry it went to the directions of, the green signs blinking and stuff like that. I'm sure that was not the intention and what you were targeting for. But the study that you did on the challenges with the population that I'm referring to, that's a great study. I want to find more ways to address that. And like I said, I'm so happy that the staff feel safe. I want the public to feel safe as well and to come back. And he talked about people using the restroom. Just yesterday we saw someone that had that overflowed one of the restrooms, that flushed too many stuff there. 2 weeks ago we saw someone who shaved there. The drops and everything now I have evidence. Unfortunately, I take my pictures of that stuff. As much as I like having only my kids' photos on my phone, now I have evidence of those stuff. Blood on the floor for a couple of times. One more thing I wanted to address previously, and I didn't, was small things of design change can solve some of the problems. There is a corner in the parking lot with boulders. Those boulders are using for seats for people, and those seats using for doing stuff in this corner. Removing the boulders or just changing the direction of the corner of the boulders, that it will not be friendly for people to sit there and consume drugs. That will be good. The benches on the front, I see people laying down on those benches just to put like a barrier in the middle of the bench like they do in many other places in cities. And changing the seats in the library that will not be as inviting to fall asleep. It will be comfortable to sit and read your book, but not going beyond that. Small stuff like that, if need to be removing the doors from the restrooms, from the stools, do that, or removing the front door of the restroom that people will not feel comfortable enough to bath there. Do that as much as it's legal. Okay, if you go to public parks, they don't have running water anymore. They just have hand sanitizer. If that's what need to be done, in order to have flyers for fish wherever is needed. If someone needs a place to take a shower, we're very lucky to have fish for that. But I'm not saying, let's turn our back to them. I'm saying, yes, let's send them to different solutions. And like that, we will bring the strong population back, that we want this population to be here. I will say that many of my friends and colleagues moving away from Carson, and we're very sad about it. And we don't want to move too. We want to bring them back here. So thank you very much for all of this hard work, and I'm waiting for the follow-up and the future things. I do want to see all of the paperwork that you put together. I will be happy to see that. Yeah, the safety. Okay. I will look on the website for that. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. And yeah, hopefully we can get this foundation up and running again. But for that, we need to make sure that the ground is ready for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. More public comment.
There we go. Good evening, everybody. For the record, my name is Tammy Westergaard, and I am the immediate past president of the Nevada Library Association and also a former employee of the Carson City Library. I was the deputy director, the development director, and the interim director in around 2010. And I just wanted to congratulate you for the question about Library Foundation. And you're right, its role is very different from that of the Friends. And you're right, Chair Knight, in terms of typically a Library Foundation is activated to help cover big capital costs. And as some of you may remember, there was an effort to build a new Knowledge and Discovery Center in Carson City, and I led that work at the time. So I'm happy as this continues to move along, I'm happy to share. I know that the library itself has a lot of the documents from that period of time. The library as a 501c3 organization has been disbanded, so it is not a part of the Friends legally. So that structure would have to be, reinstated. But the gentleman speaking before is exactly right. It takes community leadership and community will to stand up to be a part of that kind of organizing, and it takes a very clear vision in terms of what is the ask, what does that look like, what's the timeline, and there's all kinds of strategies, as I'm sure all of you are aware, having been parts of these efforts in the past. But I will certainly say that it is way past the Carson City Library's turn to have a new facility. Certainly the building that we all love right now coming out of the ground in 69, and then the addition, let's see, it was 69 and expanded in 1980. Yeah, exactly. And the efforts that the staff of the Carson City Library and boards of trustees have embarked upon to squeeze every inch of space out of that building. There is no more space in the building. There are no more places that people can go. And I know that the former library director, Sarah Jones, who led the effort to build that Knowledge and Discovery Center, I'm pretty sure she prayed every night that the doors on the front of the building would just stop working because of how many times a day, they open and close. So it's great that you're, beginning that conversation. And if there's anything that I can do to provide institutional knowledge or anything moving forward, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, that's it. Yep, my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. Any other public comment? Okay, let's move on to adjournment. That's the end of our meeting, everybody. We are adjourned. Thank you for coming.